out of the Twilight Zone. After reports of Donald Trump flushing or even eating printed papers and taking top-secret documents to his golf course, you'd think the Republican Party would be looking for new leadership. Well, you're about to enter another dimension.
I do believe if he talked about what he's capable of doing and remind people what he did in the past, he has a chance to come back. If he continues to talk about the 2020 election, I think it hurts his cause and, quite frankly, hurts the Republican Party.
Joining me now is Matthew Dowd, MSNBC political contributor, analyst, and author of Revelations on the River. Birthday boy, Eugene Daniels, Politico White House correspondent and MSNBC contributor, and Joan Walsh, national affairs correspondent for The Nation. Thank you all very much for coming to the Sunday show. Okay, this has to be one of my favorite clips of the week and certainly of 2022. Hit it, E2.
Hey everyone, Congresswoman Nancy Mace here. I'm in front of Trump Tower today, and I remember in 2015 when President Trump announced his run. I was one of his earliest supporters. I actually worked for the campaign in 2016. I worked in 7 different states across the country to help get him elected. I supported him again in 2020 because of policies I believed in. If you want to lose this seat once again in midterm election cycle to Democrats, then my opponent is more than qualified to do just that.
Not only do we have the D.C. jail, which is the D.C. gulag, but now we have Nancy Pelosi's gazpacho police spying on members of Congress, spying on the legislative work that we do, spying on our staff, and spying on American citizens that want to come talk to their representatives.
I wanted to talk about the gazpacho police. Matthew, why is someone who has no facility with the English language and maybe doesn't know much have such a presence within the Republican Party to the point where the leadership wouldn't even take action against her when she did something monumentally, well, one of the many things she did that was monumentally dumb?
Just those 3 clips you played are such a representation of where the Republican Party is today in so many different ways. But I think this is just a complete reflection on the Republican Party cares nothing anymore about guardrails. For a lengthy period of time of their existence, they at least had guardrails on their party to keep the crazies and the chameleons at bay, and no longer. And I think it's a reflection. It's not really, and I've said this before, it's not really a reflection of Donald Trump per se. It's a reflection of what the Republican Party is. Donald Trump is merely a reaction to where the party has gone, not a cause of where the party has ended up in this. But as I listen to Nancy Mace, it's a great sadness that somebody that just completely abdicates any principles at all. You listen to Marjorie Taylor Greene, she has no business being in the U.S. Congress. She basically gets a paycheck to do nothing but what she does in this. And Lindsey Graham, who's completely adopted this, whatever is in the moment the right thing to say, to be as most aligned as he can, he'll say it. It's a pure reflection on where the GOP is today, and it's actually incredibly sad that one of our 2 legacy parties has come to this.
You know, Eugene, what I found interesting about the Nancy Mace video, Nancy Mace is a congresswoman from South Carolina, right? Mm-hmm. And she's standing on 5th Avenue with Trump in New York City, with Trump Tower behind her. She is also someone who, after January 6th, was pretty out there talking about how the January 6th happened. It was an insurrection. She's been in fights with Marjorie Taylor Greene and I think also Lauren Boebert. Is the fact that she's doing this video in front of Trump Tower, is this her way of kind of saying, please, Donald Trump, don't support anybody to possibly primary me this year?
He's already endorsed one of her opponents, so I think this is her trying to endorse herself by going to Trump Tower, right? Like saying, he doesn't have to do it because I'm going to do it for him. it is exactly like Matthew's saying. It is a perfect example of what happens in the Republican Party right now. If you start out, as she did, really principled, talking deeply about how disturbed she was about January 6th and how Trump wasn't helpful to the Republican Party, and then you look at, okay, well, at some point I have to win the election, and this is what happens, right? The Republican Party is at the whims of one man that they don't get his tweets, we get these statements from him that are kind of tweet-like, but what we do know, and they don't hear from him as often as they used to, but they are trying to guesstimate what he's going to say if he's going to approve of them, and this is how a party ends up. This is what happens when a party ends up chasing that, right? Chasing the approval of one person in America. And I think as they look at winning in 2022, they're still trying to figure out, what are we running on? We can't just run on Donald Trump. We can't just run on 2020. And so it's going to be fascinating to see what happens in these primaries, because if Trump gets a bunch of Marjorie Taylor Greens in there in these primaries and they lose in the general all up and down the ballot, then I think you might see his power wane just a little bit.
Well, I mean, hope springs eternal on that. Joan, your reaction to all that you've heard, but I mean, if you have special thoughts on gazpacho police, I mean, how? Go on, Joan.
If they're gonna leave her in there, can they at least get her a tutor? Is it that hard to learn the term Gestapo? Didn't we all learn it in high school? I don't know where she went to high school. It's so embarrassing, but it's funny to us. So she gets attention. But I think that the Nancy Mace thing is even sadder, because she did show a glimmer of a spine, Jonathan, but for criticizing Trump after January 6th. For that crime, she did not vote to impeach him, but she did say he bore some responsibility. He goes out and he endorses her opponent. And instead of taking that and saying, well, I'm not his kind of gal, and I'm going to represent you, South Carolina, she goes up to Trump Tower and begs, like he's a crazy ex-boyfriend or something, and she's going to beg to get him back and show that she's the Trumpiest. So she's not even trying to come up with a different way to be a Republican. She's given up.
Watching that video, I kept thinking of that Spike Lee movie. I think it was She's Gotta Have It, where the Spike character kept saying, please, baby, baby, please, baby, baby, please, to beg him to come in. That's what Nancy Mace was basically doing outside of Trump Tower. I'm just saying that. Stay with us. The conversation is going to continue.